they said, oh no, no, we've seen to that. So I said, what do you mean? You're going to the College of Estate Management, which is an offshoot of London University or something, and as such, you will be allowed to complete your degree, and you will be 21 and you can make your own choices. and that's it, because you'll be reserved from national service till you're 21. So actually they had to give way in the end, because I had qualified early, and so when I was I had joined the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve as a student, and by the time when I was 20, I'd completed my indoctrination and training, and so I went into the Royal Navy as an upper yardman, that is an officer select, and was commissioned 6 months later, and very promptly appointed to Brawdy. And the reason I was appointed to Brawdy was quite amusing, really, but some wag in the Admiralty had got hold of it. I was literally there because I was FBM's grandson, because Brawdy, which was newly the RAF had handed over to the Navy, was flying, and there were myriads of complaints from estates and farms and all the rest of it, and claims to deal with for low flying, etc., you see, from Brawdy. So instead of doing anything very exciting, I was going round with the captain of Brawdy, introducing him to people and that sort of thing, because I knew the county. And I mean, every time it had been said, yes, but, oh, and then chairman of the council and something like that, oh, hello, Tony. The captain would be standing with me, and but he knew me and he didn't know him, you see. So it didn't go down too well with Captain Gibson, who later became a Knight of the Realm and a Vice Admiral, etc. Because his junior had just had these things anyway worked out, and I was there at quite a critical period. And next thing, my next job was in still with the Fleet Air. I'm in the old aircraft carrier HMS Ocean then, and I spent most of my time in the Mediterranean doing well. In 1954, which was 55, before the Suez Crisis, we had to pull out residual British military and equipment that was in Egypt and in Port Said in particular, and the Suez Canal, and that was all very sensitive. So then we did that, then we went across, and before we were through with that, I could tell you endless stories, but we got embroiled in the Cyprus emergency then with the Aoka terrorists. And so, in all of my naval career, I was perhaps in danger in the Suez evacuations, definitely in danger from terrorists in Cyprus, and the final operation. And I was later on the Northern Ireland patrols and anti-gun running and that sort of thing. And I participated in the last mine clearance on the North German and Danish coasts, and that wasn't done till 1969. So we did the last mine clearance, the final mine clearances up there, and so my naval experience was really confined to the North Atlantic, the North Sea, the Baltic, the Kiel Canal, and the North German coast, and the North Atlantic, you know, and that was it. So I didn't get too many, apart from the Med. The Med, it was quite people don't realise the value of a navy sometimes in diplomatic affairs. It's not only, it gives the country a certain amount of impact, and of course we used to entertain quite a lot when we were able to do that. I remember once I was on a North Sea operation with the Home Fleet. Had a cruise every year, which was an operational one, and we fielded a fleet under the Commander-in-Chief Home Fleet, which was larger than the entire Navy today. And we went. So we were there were two carriers, a headquarters ship called HMS Tyne, which is quite big, and then two supporting cruisers, two fleet oilers, one aircraft replenishment ship, 25 destroyers, 26 destroyers and 25 frigates in the outer screen. And that operation went up to Spitsbergen, mimicking the sort of operations that had occurred in World War II, you know, in order to catch ships like the Scharnhorst and that sort of thing, you see. So we fought over the NATO scenarios there. I don't know. And it was a funny sort of world, you know. I mean, I had a small accident with the ship I was in command of, Minesweeper, with a Polish line of the Bartery, which was going out. And I didn't realise. I mean, I got very nervous and thought I was going to get hauled over the coals. It wasn't my fault, but entirely. And then the Polish officers were much the same, but they were terrified of the Russian commissar that they had within among this. Oh. So all they wanted was to hush everything up, so the Russians didn't get involved. So that was it. And after all, they didn't want the Russians involved, and the Germans would have been sensitive because it happened in the Kiel Canal, which was notionally theirs. I don't know. It was mad world for world. Then later on, after I got married and so on, I decided to come back here. I had one visit to Pembroke Dock at that time. I was familiar with it, of course, and I was a young officer, came ashore from my ship on Car Jetty, and we were walking through the town. It was pretty dead. Might have been 1956, 57, something like that. And a local character who you might remember called Buffer James, the blokes have been kidding me and saying, well, you're local, where do we find the birds, where do we find the beer? And we're walking along, and I don't know what I'm going to do about this. But Buffer James popped out of the Conservative Club. You know, he used to go around having... Do you remember Buffer at all? No. He was a local character, Major W.D.S. James. He lived just over here, and he popped out, and he looked at me, and he said, Christ, he said, you must be Jackie Mason's son. So I said, yes, I am. Well, then he said, come on in, boys, and we were swept into the Conservative club. Alan Bowling, who was the auctioneer at that, called. He cost him 2 cars that night because we got damaged with all the drinking, etc. And there it was. Not too long afterwards, the ship had to come back. They had the Asian flu epidemic, and I was the navigating officer. I got one of the first people to get the Asian flu, and I got landed, and the army had now taken over the hospital in those days, which had been the Naval Hospital. Well, the flu epidemic reached terrific proportions, but as one of the first people there, I ended up, as a junior officer, recovering, and found myself basically in charge of nursing services and feeding the hospital, because the medical staff were so fully engaged, and they kept catching it themselves, there were no orderlies or nurses left because they were all down with the flu. We ran through the army were up there, and they were at Manorbier, and they were out at Castle Martin. We ran through all their medical staff, etc. And I, as a recovered shipman, my ship had sailed and left me there, you see. So I was stuck with it as acting as hospital administrator, which was something I wasn't qualified. Anyway, subsequently, after I married, my wife found that she didn't take to life in Tenby when I was away at sea, etc. So we arrived at a solution where I transferred to the Naval Reserve as a training officer, and we made our home in Pembroke Dock, where I had the honour in the end of being the sort of temporary acting Queen's Harbour Master for about 15 years, actually, including 3 Royal Yacht visits, if any of you remember them. So I'd transferred that. Yes, I'm still, as a result of that, I suppose, I was on retirement. The Admiralty Board decided to so-called petition the Queen to appoint me an honorary officer of the fleet, so that I could serve on for life anyway. When I reached the mandatory, it wouldn't be a problem today because but there was a mandatory retirement age, and I was past that. So since I was at HMS Cambria representing Naval Forces in uniform on Wednesday night of this week and talking to the First Minister on naval affairs, I have and can claim definitely 60 years unbroken service for the Royal Navy and the Royal Naval Reserves. So,